Now, as we begin this third hour of the show, we talk about the relationship between Canada and the U.S. Is there a greater nation-to-nation relationship on this planet than the one shared by Canada and the U.S.? I'd argue no. I'd say this is as good as it gets between countries, but there's no question that the relationship is frayed. It's our pleasure to welcome one of the people tasked at times with mending those frays. Pete Hoekstra is the U.S. ambassador to Canada, and he joins us in studio this morning. Ambassador, welcome to the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'll start off with one for the locals, because you're from your home state of Michigan, also known for terrible roads at times. You've been riding Montreal roads. Who's got the worst roads here, Michigan or Quebec?
Well, actually, the folks in the car asked me on the way over that exact same question. Okay, compare the roads between Montreal and Michigan, and I say, when we've driven over here, I could be in Michigan. There is no difference. So
okay.
You haven't trapped me into making a qualified statement about the quality of the roads here, because that would get me into trouble. All I can say is that the roads here remind me of the roads in Michigan.
Well,
I believe that our road engineers go to the same universities, that we fill potholes in similar ways in the winter. When we have potholes in Michigan, we have trucks riding down the road and someone in the back with a shovel.
Yep, that's how we do it here.
And when they get to a hole, they throw some tar in the direction of the hole, and they hope it goes in.
Okay, so listen, I think that says it all right there, any way you say it here. Now, Ambassador, you are known as someone that speaks plainly, candidly, bluntly at times. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to do the same. Maybe I'll bring down the formality here, because I think we can have a great conversation for our listeners.
I think that's
if we
the
speak
only
plainly,
way you
right?
can have conversations and solve things.
So, yeah, exactly, right? Now, I was looking at one of your tweets from Monday. You've been in Montreal for a while. Here's a tweet from you. U.S. aerospace firms are major suppliers to Canadian manufacturers and vice versa, with cross-border supply chains supporting both commercial and defense aviation. Many of the companies I spoke with in Montreal are vital suppliers to U.S. aerospace giants like Boeing and Lockheed Martin. This integration supports thousands of jobs on both sides of the border, bolsters the competitiveness of the North American aerospace products, right? So I read that tweet. I was like, fantastic. He gets it. He realizes just how important this relationship is. And then I see the president of the U.S. yesterday at the factory at Ford in Dearborn, and he says, we don't need their products. We don't need the cars made in Canada. And he said it about so many Canadian products: lumber, steel, energy, you name it. So what is it, Ambassador Hoekstra? Do you need us, or do you not need us?
Well, I think the key operative word is need. Mm-hmm. All right. No, we do not need Canada. Have we taken the framework of NAFTA, which I voted on in 1993? Have we taken the opportunities of USMCA, CUSMA, where partners or companies on both sides of the border made the decision to do business together under that framework? And they have, and they've been very, very successful. And now both governments, when they signed USMCA, or all three governments, when they signed USMCA, said in 6 years we're going to review it. And that's the process that we're going through now. And sometime this summer, sometime hopefully this fall, we will have a new outline of how we do business together, and whether those relationships that we have put in place, whether those will foster and grow, or whether Canadian companies and American companies will go their separate ways because of the decisions that are made by their governments.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there are key indications that, the president recognizes the value of these relationships. Okay. But at the same time, it's kind of like, no, we've got to get to a new agreement. That's
because one of the things I go back and forth on is like, okay, valuing this relationship, but then at times it feels like there's a constant dismissal. And of course, we've seen the ramifications of that. Like Canadians, their attitude toward the U.S. has changed in the last year because of that.
Yeah, and if that, we're going through negotiations. Yeah. And if the Canadian government believes and it's going to follow public opinion, Canadian government may decide that okay, doing business with America is not in our best interest, and we're going to go another way. Canada's a sovereign country; they can do that.
But the United States has a role in that public, that public favorability, right? There are ways where you could be having statements that would lead the Canadian public, to say, "Yeah, this is a vital relationship." So I wonder if there's a bad blood right now.
Obviously, right now with public opinion polls, the public doesn't view the relationship necessarily as being very valuable or critical. My opinion on this is that it has created a tremendous amount of prosperity and wealth and a tremendous number of high quality, high paying jobs on both sides of the border.
And that means there is some value there, obviously, if it's creating high value jobs.
We're not saying there's no value. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things that I struggle with is the tone, right? And the treatment towards Canada, especially when it comes from the president, right? Because I feel like in the grand lottery of planet Earth, the United States hit the jackpot. Like, your neighbor is not North Korea, it's not Iran, it's not China, it's Canada. By the way, it goes both ways. Like, Canada,
it goes both ways.
Canada hit the jackpot. Your neighbor is our neighbor is the United States, and we've been there in your times of need. I know this is the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and you've talked before about the role Canadians had in supporting the United States on that day. So, as I've described it, we've both hit the jackpot, and it feels like we may be throwing it away with some of this acrimony. How would you describe it?
I think that my parents were liberated by Canadians.
Yes.
I bring that up frequently in Groningen. And so, there is a strong foundation, and it's now being, reviewed as we go through CUSMA. And as you go into a negotiation, as you review, you both come in with, your strong suit. And so I'm optimistic about where it ends up. I mean, it's the president says, we don't need it.
Yeah.
Okay, but at the end of the day, even if we decided we're leaving USMCA, and we've, the president and his trade negotiator have made it very clear, all options are on the table. I think Canada views it the same way. All options are on the table.
Have you had a discussion with the president about the tone aspect? Because that seems to me like could even be an easy fix on pressing the reset button.
I've not had a discussion with the president on the tone. The president is his own messenger.
Yeah.
Okay, and he will take input. We provide him, regular updates on things going on. But it's not just the president. Okay, from my perspective, I read lots of stuff. Yeah. Canadian stuff that Canadians say about the United States of America. Yeah. I look at what Canadian government, provincial governments are doing to the United States. It doesn't make me very happy, but Canadians are free to do what they want.
Can you give me Can you give me an example or two on that end that is on the top of that list for you?
In terms of tone
and decisions, what you just referenced, the things that you're reading.
Sure. I mean, I think you have premiers who attack the president personally. Okay. I am not aware of the president's team, governors, or the folks that work out of the embassy attacking Mark Carney. We respect him as the leader of Canada. You have folks that just absolutely trash the president, who are in key government officials, and that's a decision they make. I don't like it, but if that's what they want to do, that's what they can do.
There have been some indications that U.S. sectors have been hurt by the current state of relations between the country. I looked at one recent poll that shows like a 70-20 split on keeping U.S. booze off Canadian shelves. 70% of Canadians in favor, only 20% oppose that. And of course, that hurts U.S. booze manufacturers.
Sure.
How do you view that aspect, that there are U.S. companies hurting because of all this?
Well, I think, it's absolutely appropriate for Canada to retaliate. We have banned so many Canadian products in the United States of America. Oh, wait a minute. No, we haven't.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we haven't banned any American products in Canada. Excuse me, we haven't banned any Canadian products in America.
Yeah.
We do not have the president's team or governor saying, don't travel to America. If you go into a store, pick up a box and take a look, and if it says made in America, put it back. We don't do that. But again, if Canada's negotiating position and they believe that this strengthens their negotiating position to ban American products, encourage their citizens not to travel to the United States, that's their negotiating position, and it kind of sets a tone for the relationship.
All right, let's talk about some stuff that the U.S. administration, various members of the administration have said. And I want to move it on to stuff we heard from the State Department in November. State Department delivering a rather blunt assessment of many of its allies. And I'll read you and to our listeners just a bit of that. So this is from the State Department in November. It has to do with mass migration. Mass migration poses an existential threat to Western civilization, undermines the stability of key American allies. Today, the State Department instructed U.S. embassies to report on the human rights implications and public safety impacts of mass migration. Mass migration is a human rights concern. Western nations have endured crime waves, terrorist attacks, sexual assaults, and the displacement of communities. It goes on. It says that U.S. officials will urge governments to take bold action. So in that, embassies asked to report from peer Western nations. What's your report on Canada when you report back to the State Department? What are you telling them on this front?
I think we will share with them the facts and the issues, or the facts on what Canadian migration is, what their border policies are, and all of those types of things. We would report exactly and answer the questions that they have. Mm-hmm. And it's a human rights issue. Obviously, who Canada allows into the country is a Canadian issue. That's not an American issue. Mm-hmm. How the U.S. responds to that is an American issue. All right? And people, I love the analysis sometimes, when someone says, Pete, do you think that there's any possibility that there may be changes in pre-clearance? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, as premiers are, pounding their chest and saying, we have decreased traffic to the United States by air by 21%. It's kind of like, does that have an impact? And it's like, we're trying to run the government more like a business. Mm. All right. So the first question would be, is if you drove the traffic all the way down to zero, do you think we would still have 100 pre-clearance officers in XYZ city? And the answer is probably not. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if it goes down 50%, would you reevaluate? And it's like, yeah, probably. Mm-hmm. At some, because you get the different break points. And people then say, the ambassador's threatening Canada to close pre-clearance. It's kind of like, no, I'm a business guy. If the traffic went down by a significant portion, I'd have to report to Washington and say, our resources may be better spent somewhere else. Mm-hmm. That's not a threat. It's just it's a pure business analysis. Same thing here.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian-owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.
We're with Pete Hoekstra, the U.S. ambassador to Canada. So the reason I ask you that is because I think it does relate to the relationship between Canada and the U.S., and at the end of the day, it may relate to trade deals. So, when I see Vice President J.D. Vance leaning into Canada and having some, particularly blunt points to make about how Canada has handled migration and its economy, I wonder, does that lead you down to the path where you feel when it comes to a trade agreement like USMCA, where the decisions made in Canada on that front could affect the outcome of trade deals?
Yes. Okay. I mean, if you know, the we will, if Canada allows, significant amounts, steel has been an issue.
Yeah.
Okay. If Canada has a policy on steel that, or let's say product XYZ, that allows countries from around the world to dump that product into Canada, and that Canada then uses those products, uses those materials for stuff that they export to the United States, would we recognize that reality? And the answer is yes. Because we would believe that would create unfair competition for companies in the U.S. that use those same materials, but we prohibit the dumping.
So with that in mind, to talk about that, right now, as you're here in Montreal, Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, is in China. I've heard your thoughts on how China does trade. A lot of people believe that China cheats on trade. Lo and behold, we have Canada seemingly opening up more doors to China. How do you view that the Prime Minister of Canada right now is in China trying to find a replacement for U.S. trade?
We do business with China. Canada, is more than welcome to do business with China. Again, you're a sovereign country. If you want to do business with China and you see China,
but you brought up the dumping, right? And like on steel, right? China dumps steel into Canada, then Canada may be dumping steel into the U.S., right? So that's the link.
I think I think what we would like to see, and our view would be, and we've had these discussions with Canada, is that we would like to see a coherent strategy versus the threats that we believe come from China. And Canada was very supportive on autos, on EVs. Okay, we put in a tariff regime. Canada followed suit. Very similar, if not identical. Obviously, we would view that as a positive development because, much of this is the economic bloc of North America. So, what Mark Carney is doing in Canada is, I'm hoping that, there's a clarity between Mark and the president as to what Canada is trying to achieve. There's an openness and a sharing. Doesn't mean that Canada is going to do exactly what we want or the president wants, but that there's an understanding of, we go there, this may be the U.S. response.
And we've heard reports that Canada is considering removing those EV tariffs on Chinese-made EVs. Would you view that as a bad thing for the future of any Canada-U.S. trade deal?
No, I think it would have if you're allowing EVs and other vehicles to come in from China, I would say don't necessarily expect that the U.S. border is going to be porous and allow Chinese vehicles to come through China and pour into the United States. No.
I want to talk a bit about sovereignty here, particularly in light of what's happened with the discussion over Greenland, right? The line that I've heard from the president and the U.S. administration that if they don't do something with Greenland, that Russia or China will, right? That's the rationale and the reasoning behind that. I wonder if that also applies to Canada's north. Because there have been many people that say that Canada isn't doing enough in the north, and I would think there's also been Russia and China having an interest in Canada's north. Do you view it the same way, that if Canada doesn't do something with its north, that it'll end up in Russia and or Chinese hands, and that the United States may have to act on that front?
Well, you got a couple of things going on. You got number one. The vice president and our secretary of state are meeting with officials from Greenland, perhaps right now. Okay, let's see where that all ends up over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months. The second one is almost purely hypothetical. I mean, the indications from the Canadian government has been that we want to very, very closely coordinate and cooperate with the United States on Canada's north. Matter of fact, Canada, Finland, and the United States have reached agreement on, I think, a very interesting pact on building icebreakers. Okay, some of it is Canadian. Well, I guess it's Canadian manufacturing. You're buying a shipbuilding or investing in a shipbuilding facility on America's south coast. We're using Finland technology, and so the Finns, the Canadians, and the Americans, we're not moving to a point where we're disagreeing on how to protect the North. We're actually working together to make sure that we are in lockstep.
So on defense, you would say we are in alignment on that front right now.
Well, there's a lot in defense.
Yeah.
Okay, we've done so much together on defense. I think we're continuing to do a lot together on defense. I think that is most likely where we are going to forward. We've created a great defense infrastructure in Canada. We started off with aerospace,
which has been a big part of your visit.
Big part of my visit. Yeah. Okay, but what has helped generate that? Canadian ingenuity, Canadian investment, Canadian workforce, in partnership with American investment, creativity for some of the products on the F-35. We've transferred intellectual property to Canadian companies to help them be an effective partner in building F-35s. So I think we've got a great relationship. Now, obviously, there's a little tension in that there's a little bit of tension in that right now. But I think we'll end up in a good place. I'm hopeful we end up in a good place.
Before I have to let you go, I do want to spend some time just on the non-tariff trade barriers that are existing between our country. I've seen that the United States has been pretty relentless in its attack of Europe's over-regulation in almost every industry. Even when it doesn't affect the U.S., it's almost like, wake up, guys, you're hurting yourselves when you talk about how Europe goes down regulation. Seems like Canada has gone down a regulation and legislation path on a lot of fronts. I know that's been irksome, to put it mildly, on the U.S. What's the message you have for Canada on some of these laws and regulations that you believe are hurting American business and tech companies?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, we want a strong Europe and we want a strong Canada. So the more that you can make Canadian companies and businesses and the economy more competitive, we welcome that, okay, because we have such a close integration. The second thing is, if it's Europe or if it's Canada, putting in place certain barriers to American companies or taxes specifically targeting Americans. They don't say American, but you can, by reading the rules and the regulations, you can say, oh, okay, this is going after American companies. We will defend American companies vigorously. Okay, and their rights, and we will defend them vigorously, and we will use all means to do that.
Let me ask
all economic means to do that.
That's good.
Right,
nice little addendum there.
Yes, thank you.
To wrap up here, how many more measures should we expect when it comes to border control? Canadians visiting the U.S., searching social media, etc. What lies ahead for that?
I think people I talk to, we've got a place in Florida. We see a lot of Canadians. Yeah. I hear anecdotally every once in a while, but a Canadian has a problem. I don't think it's a widespread problem. And so we want Canadians to visit. We are open for business. We love to have them in Florida, although sometimes it extends our wait times at restaurants and those types of things. We want them to go back to Phoenix. Yeah, go to Phoenix.
And it's also your 250th birthday for America, right? Yeah. And there are a lot of Canadians that say, I don't want to celebrate. To wrap up here, what's your message to the Canadians that in the last little while said, I don't want to celebrate America this year. Maybe I would have, but now I don't want to.
That's a Canadian decision. Okay? We've been great partners for a long period of time. We're going through this as a negotiation. Doesn't have to be an emotional issue. If you want to make it an emotional issue, that's fine. Debate, things that the president has said. We don't get, I'm not getting, wrapped up in what this person says or that person says. It's kind of like, this is good for business in America. That's my objective. I'm assuming that Mark Carney and his team, they're negotiating for what's best in Canada. And in 8 or 9 months, we'll see exactly where that ends up.
Ambassador Hoekstra, you've been very generous with your time. Thank you for coming in this morning, making us a stop on your trip.
Thank you.
That's the U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra.
I'm Dylan Playfair.
And I'm Tyler Smith.
We're putting loneliness in the penalty box by talking to some of our favorite athletes about the importance of friendship.
This is Bromance.
Bromance is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers, proudly Canadian owned and operated. Charm has been part of your love stories and bromances for over 50 years.
And you can find Bromance on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your podcasts.